Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of It's Chalked, a Call of Duty esports podcast. I'm Preston Byers, and I'm doing the show solo this week. If you didn't listen to the first episode, go back and listen to it. I talked with Zach Lang. We talked mostly about Call of Duty esports franchising and the city slots for the upcoming franchised league. And we talked about a few other esports topics regarding Call of Duty. But today I am going to be talking about the past week in the CWO Pro League, which featured some very highs with Team Reciprocity and its amazing comebacks throughout the week, and then the lows of Luminosity Gaming and the sudden and shocking benching of Gunless. And we're also going to talk a little bit about Division B, which starts this week. So hopping right into it, let's talk about Luminosity, because this is one of the weirder stories of the year. A team that won an event, they won CWO Fort Worth in March, and now they've benched their best player, one of the best players in the world, Gunless. They benched him Thursday morning, technically, at 1 a.m. They sent out a tweet that said that the team atmosphere had slowly deteriorated, and despite our attempts to rectify the situation, we've reached a point where a change is necessary, and that change was to bench Gunless and bring in the coach, Ricky. Ricky played for Optic at one point, played for, I think, Complexity last year. He's a veteran. He's obviously a really smart player, but he obviously doesn't have the skill that someone like Gunless does. And so he got brought in for the last match of the week for Luminosity when they played Optic. Obviously, nobody's really expecting Luminosity to beat Optic. The way that Optics played, they had won like 6 or 7 matches in a row in the league, and they're one of the best teams in the world. Luminosity they've lost, I think, 7 or 8 Pro League matches in a row. They're one of the worst teams in the Pro League at the moment. So nobody was really expecting much, but they gave them a close 3-game series. Optic still swept, but for the most part, Luminosity kept it close, and they made Optic work for it. That can be attributed to Optic maybe trolling a little bit, not taking it as seriously as they probably should have, because they knew that Luminosity's head isn't into it. They played poorly already. And they don't have their best players. So there are a lot of factors that could have led to how close these games were, but there's no denying that Formal played significantly better when Gunless was on the bench. And I'm not saying it's because Gunless is on the bench, but because he's on a Maddox. And Maddox players can play faster than ICR players, and Formal is just he's born to run a Maddox here. Classic didn't do well, and he's continued to kind of feed into these rumors and these criticisms that fans have had about him, because people are wanting Classic to be dropped and then Formal and Gunless to stay on the team with maybe Slacked, maybe John, but bring in a main AR that can run the ICR and that can help them get back to, even like top 8, because right now they're just maybe the worst team in the Pro League. But in this 3-game series, Formal had an adjusted KD of 1.65, which was by far the highest in this game, or in this match. Crim6 was second at 1.22. Everybody else on Luminosity had under a 1.00 adjusted KD. This is according to codstats.gg. Classic had a 0.63 adjusted KD. Obviously, he is an entry SOG player, so it's going to be tougher for him to really do this, and they're obviously going to bait for Formal a little bit more because he's the best player on the team. He can help them get the kills and win games, but still, it didn't look good for him for Classic, and it looked really good for Formal, who really bumped up his stock and kind of reminded everyone why people think he's the best player, or like one of the best players to ever play Call of Duty. Ricky played all right, not anything special, but you weren't expecting it when he got put in. That's just how it is. He had a 0.75 adjusted KD, a 0.77 real KD. So it's not that bad. He's a slow AR. It's just how it is. Um, they I've seen some people, mostly on Reddit, suggest that they should keep Ricky in the lineup and then just look for someone to replace Classic and then maybe replace John. I think that's an asinine suggestion, to be honest, because you really do need a talented ICR, and I don't believe Ricky is the solution. If Luminosity really wants to compete for championships, he's not gonna be the solution here. So I don't see Ricky sticking around. I'm sure he's a good coach. I would hope he's a good coach. This team needs a good coach, but I don't see him as the solution at the main AR role. I don't know what's next for Luminosity though, because obviously they're out of contention to secure an automatic spot at CWL Finals because they're not going to finish in the top 4 in Division A. But they can still get in through the play-in tournament, but they have to go through CWL Anaheim, which is next month in June, and then they'll have to do the play-in tournament, and I'm sure this roster will look a little bit differently after that, after Anaheim, because there's no way that they can keep these players together and expect anything other than disappointment right now. I've seen suggestions that they should pick up someone like Assault to run the main AR and then put Gunless and Formal on the Maddoxes, and then drop Classic, pick up a SOG player, and maybe have Slack run SOG. But I think that Slack has been running a lot of Maddox lately, so I'm not sure how it works for them, how their roles will work. I think Spacely would be a really good option for them as a SOG player. I think he would replace Classic really well. Obviously, that role is extremely difficult to play, is the entry SOG role, because basically you're just baiting for your teammates. Your KD is always going to be lower than your teammates and your opponents, just because you're the bait and you're baiting for your teammates to get those kills and to win you the game. And it's just a really important role that people just need to play, and I think that Spacely fits it. He's a team player. I think that he's a really smart player. He has experience playing with someone like Slacked. He's best friends with John. He's actually roommates with John, so I think that he would fit well with this team. I think he also brings some leadership to this team, and when you have such a talented lineup, I have no doubts about any of these players' individual skill level, but there is something evidently wrong with this team and that needs to be addressed. And I think one way to address it is to bring in someone that is a very good leader, someone that is proven to be very smart when it comes to S&D strategies. I mean, it's kind of a meme now, but Spacely and his notebook in, IW Pro League, he was kind of ahead of the game. He was really trying to incorporate more tactics and plays into S&D than was common at the time. And so I think that he's a good option as a replacement SOG for Classic. I don't know how the roles will shake out other than that. Whether you want to put Gunless on the main AR and then you have Formal move to Maddox, because I think that the solution, Formal solution is definitely to go to the Maddox and become a full-time Maddox player. But what happens with the main AR role? They could bring in someone like Assault or someone like Chino. Just depends on how things go. But we won't really know because they can't make any roster changes until after Anaheim. So we have 3 to 4 weeks left before we can even see any kind of roster change. But let's switch gears here a little bit and get away from Luminosity and the bad play that's happened with that team for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. And let's talk about Team Reciprocity, which went undefeated in the last week of the CWL Pro League. I think they went 4-0. but they had a very eventful 4 matches. They actually had a lot of comebacks and a lot of crazy comebacks, and they were led by Dylan, who has really become one of the best players in the world, and he's been recognized as one of the best players in the world at the moment. Reciprocity really struggled to find consistency for most of the CWL Pro League up until this week. And I don't think that the change from Tommy to Dens had a ton to do with it, but I think that everybody just took it to another level when they stepped up once Tommy had to step away and had to give up his spot to Dens. So I think that people just stepped up and they did their job, and I think Dylan just went to another level this week, and he showed that, regardless of who's running what on his team, he's going to play the absolute best, and he's going to give his team as best of a chance to win as any other player can give them. So I think he's a major factor, and he has to be considered as one of the best players in the world. And if he is able to keep this type of play up for the rest of the season, he's got to be considered one of the best players of the year and possibly the best player of the year. And that's really tough to say, because when you have such talented players on championship winning teams like 100 Thieves with like Priesta or Octane or Slasher, it's really tough to say like, oh, someone on I think they're through 17 games, I think they're 9-8 or something like that. So it's tough to say, oh, they should get the player of the year when you're not on a winning team. But I think that he's proven to be one of the most valuable players. And I don't know where Reciprocity would even be if they replaced him with just an average player. I don't know what their record in the Pro League would be like. I think that Luminosity would have had a better chance to beat them if Dylan wasn't a factor on the map, because he's a major problem for every opposing team in the CWL Pro League. And I'm excited to watch Reciprocity play these Division B teams when they go back to cross-divisional matchups after Anaheim. But I don't know what the future of this team is, whether they're able to keep this up, because there is a very good chance that they just have this chemistry, they have the roles down, and that they're able to place in the top 4 at Anaheim. But there's also a possibility that this is just the honeymoon period, and we've seen this with multiple different teams in the past, that after a certain period of stability and just good performance, everything just goes wrong, and things just don't work out the way that they had been working for several weeks. And so it's not a very uncommon thing for that to happen, and that honeymoon period to end rather quickly and it have a harsh effect on the team. So maybe that happens. I'm not sure. I think that Anaheim is a big test for Reciprocity, and if they don't place well, then I think that really signifies the end of the honeymoon period for that team. So let's get into Division B talk. So we have 8 teams coming back to Columbus, Ohio this week, and those 8 teams are 100 Thieves, E United, Team Heretics, Splice, Team Envy, Enigma 6, Denial Esports, and Elevate. At the top of the leaderboard is 100 Thieves, E United, and Heretics, who all sit at 8-3 entering this week. They've all played pretty well up until this point. But with E United just playing super well at 100 Thieves and E United faced each other in the CWL London finals. 100 Thieves has looked like the best team in the world for the last, I'd say, month and a half. United's looked like one of the best teams in Black Ops 4 in total. I think that Simp is one of the best players to touch Call of Duty, in all honesty. And I think that this, with more practice, they had, I don't want to say limited practice before London, but they've had a lot more since then. And I think that it will really help with the chemistry. And I'm really excited to see this division, how it works out, because 100 Thieves is obviously a great team. They've been together since pretty much the beginning of the game, or since FaZe didn't make it into the Pro League, because they obviously added Priesta and Crowder as their coach. So 100 Thieves has been really good since January or February. United, they had to make a roster change after Fort Worth, and they dropped JCap, and they added Simp, who had recently turned 18. And I think these are the two best teams in the world. I think that Optic has a very good argument to make to be in that top discussion, but if we're just going off the final event, then they lost to both of these teams. So Optic would be third, United would be second, and then 100 Thieves would be the best team in the world at the moment. Whether that continues to be true in the Pro League and then into Anaheim remains to be seen. But at the moment, they're both really, really, really good, and I think they don't play each other this coming week, but they play each other in their first or second match next week. So that's definitely the match of the week next week. Heretics is also tied for first at 8-3. Heretics is a really weird team because they've looked really good in the past and they've looked pretty average. So really, what are we expecting? They finished top 6 at London. They finished top 8 in Fort Worth. So they're definitely a good team, but I'm just a little worried about their consistency and how they'll be able to play against United 100 Thieves in some of these new look rosters. Some of these new look rosters include Team Envy, who added Decimate and Pharaoh to their roster, Enigma 6, who added GodRx, and I think Jet Li, yeah, forgive me if that's incorrect. And then Denial is completely different because it has Red Reserve players with Brack. And then you also have the mixed French-American team, Elevate. I think Elevate, while I don't personally believe that they're going to be very competitive in a pretty stacked division, if I might add, I don't think they'll be able to compete, but I think that it's one of the most interesting stories of Division B is how Elevate play with each other, because there were a lot of questions when the roster was actually formed, I think a month or two ago. How would they be able to play with each other as, I don't think Risque, I don't think he actually speaks English or something like that. So the language barrier definitely plays a factor into that, and it's just, it was kind of it looked like a slapped together roster, one that wasn't thought about way too much, but something that just had to be done because those were the only players available. So I'm interested to see how they do. I don't really have a lot of faith that they'll be able to, make a run at the top 4 or anything, but who knows? COD's weird. I didn't think Luminosity would be at the bottom of Division A, and here we are. So I definitely don't know what to think, really. So looking at this Enigma 6 roster, so it's General Kismet, Frosty, GodRx, Jet Li. So yeah, I'm excited to watch that team. I think that GodRx and Jet Li are both really talented players. I'm not sure exactly how they'll work out because I haven't seen any of their scrims. But there's so much unknown in Division B at the moment. Yeah, we know 100 Thieves and E United are two of the best teams in the world. We know that Heretics is a really good team, but they're inconsistent. We know that Splice has the capability and they have the skill to be one of the top teams, but they're also 6-5 in the Pro League, and they, as far as I know, they didn't have like the greatest placing in London. They finished top 12. So what can we expect out of Splice? Same with Team Envy. They just made a roster change. They added 2 really young, talented players, but will they be able to get back to the top of the league? They finished 4th with Desi and Pharaoh, so maybe they're really good and they're able to compete with these top teams. It's just unknown. And this Denial roster is just super weird because right now you have Joe, Rated Bance, Alex, and Brack on that team. And I think that those are all really talented players. I'm not sure how they fit with each other and how they stack up against these other teams in their division. But it should be really interesting to watch. I'm trying to look at the matches for this week. So Denial and MB kick it off at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday. I think, and then Enigma 6 and then Splice. Enigma 6 versus Splice follows that up to finish out Monday. So we'll see 2 new look rosters with MV and Enigma 6, and then just basically a completely different team with Denial, Splice. So yeah, I think the best match or the biggest match of the week may be 100 Thieves versus Envy, which is at 7:30 on Wednesday. There's also United versus Envy, which is the last match on Thursday, so it's scheduled for 7:30 as well. I think I don't know what's going to happen here in Division B. We saw a lot of weird or unexpected things in Division A. Optic just crushing everybody, having very little struggle with the other teams. FaZe bouncing back, Gen G looking really bad and uncoordinated, Reciprocity going undefeated the second week, Midnight not looking very good, EG actually looking pretty good despite choking a few series here and there, UIU looking really good, and Luminosity looking really bad. I think we'll see more of the same. I think that if I had to predict, 100 Thieves, United, Heretics, and Envy are the top 4 teams after this 2-week split, and then probably Splice, Denial, E6, Elevate, if I just had to pick off the top of my head. But you never know. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Splice finds what they were looking for and they start doing really well again. I think that there's a lot of talent on that team, and we saw in Vegas how they're just a really good team, so they shouldn't have as much trouble with the league as they have had in the past 11 games. I don't think that there's anything else that I had on the agenda today, so that's going to be it. Thanks for listening again to this episode of It's Chalked. You can follow me on Twitter at PresByers, that's PresByers, and follow the podcast on Twitter at It's Chalked. And don't forget to like, share, rate, review, do whatever that you do on your podcast platform, whether that's Spotify, iTunes, Google Music, or we have it on Podbean as well. So whatever that you want to do or need to do on your podcast platform to support the podcast, please do that. I really appreciate it. You can, if you do something, if you rate it on iTunes and you screenshot it and send it to It's Chalked or my Twitter, I'll follow you, I'll like it, I'll retweet. I really appreciate any support that you can give to the podcast. I can be really appreciative to that. Thanks for listening, guys. I hope this helped and this was entertaining. Let me know if you want me to do more solo shows, or if you really like the dynamic that me and Zach had last week. Yep. So thanks, guys. All right. It's Chalked.